Welcome to FOXSOUL's Black Report. This is the place where we bring you the headlines and the latest in black news, views, and opinions. I'm Romeo.
Hey there, I'm Brooke.
I'm Demi.
And I'm Melissa.
All right, on today's show, Jacob Blake is suing. We'll let you know which city is ending qualified immunity for police officers, and we're going to break down sweeping changes to Georgia elections. Plus, a Georgia lawmaker has been arrested. The video is going viral and causing outrage.
Severe storms and tornadoes hit the South. A shipping container crisis could spark another toilet paper shortage, and a radio host was fired after comparing black female celebrities to burnt toast.
We're also investigating the murder of Biggie Smalls, and the vice president of the NAACP Hollywood Bureau, Robin Harrison, is here to provide us with details on this year's NAACP Image Awards.
Yes, we have all that and so much more. So if you're ready, it's our voice and our truth. Let's get it.
To me, this reeks of conflict of interest.
Do we know if he actually waved a gun? We only hear one side of the story.
This just really did make me feel good that the justice system did what they needed to.
So we're going to keep following this story, and we will have the latest for you. All right, here are your headlines for the day. Jacob Blake Jr. has filed a civil lawsuit accusing a Kenosha, Wisconsin police officer of excessive force. Blake was paralyzed when a white officer shot him in the back. The incident happened in August. Kenosha officer Rustin Shesky shot Blake as he was about to get into an SUV as officers were responding to a domestic dispute call. The shooting was caught on cell phone video and turned the nation's spotlight on Wisconsin during a summer marked by protests over police brutality and racism. It happened 3 months after George Floyd died as a Minneapolis police officer knelt on his neck. Back to the lawsuit. Reports show the 18-page complaint includes still photos showing each of the 7 shots fired by Shesky. The complaint also says the officer held the muzzle only a few feet away from where Blake's 2 young children were seated, putting them in imminent danger from being hit by gunfire or ricocheting bullets. You know, I want to talk to you all a little bit more about this, and if I imagine you're not at all surprised about the lawsuit. The one thing that I think a lot of people keep coming back to that this incident is so powerful for a lot of people watching is this is one of the very few incidents where the person who's saying, hey, this is police brutality, they're alive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's not their family. It's him.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the one thing that I think of every time we talk about Jacob Blake is that, we saw so many cases just over the summer alone, right? Over 2020 in itself. And so many people, we have Breonna Taylor. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, we could just get to naming them down, but yes, Brooke, great point. He gets to say in, court that this was wrong. This happened to me, like other people like George Floyd don't have the opportunity. But we just also have to think about the trauma that he's going through every single day. I mean, he's alive, but it's a lot of trauma that he's went through, and he's also paralyzed right now. So it's kind of like he doesn't get to live his full life like he could have before this whole thing happened. So he's not fully, 100%, even though he is alive.
The only thing that kind of surprises me about the lawsuit is that it only includes the officer, and it doesn't include the entire police department. I just thought that they're suing for punitive damages. They're suing for, basically his medical bills to be covered, et cetera, et cetera. And this officer, he doesn't really have that kind of, money, no matter what kind of insurance he's got,
That's true. Yeah.
So it's just, I thought that was interesting. Also, Ben Crump is one of his attorneys.
And then there's a story, if you read some of the stories out there, that there was outstanding warrants. So they were trying to attempt to arrest him, and there may have been a pocket knife in his pocket that he claimed that he was taking back to the car. He was walking away from the police, so there was no threat there. You can't say he was threatening his kids because they didn't even know his kids were in the car when they were shooting, or they just didn't care at that point. Mm-hmm. So again, if this does go in the favor of Jacob Blake Jr., which it should, who does it fall back on? Taxpayers, right? Have to
every single time. Mm-hmm.
Right. Exactly. Well, New York City is the first city in the country to end qualified immunity for officers. Yesterday, the city council has voted to end qualified immunity for police officers. The protection has prevented officers from being sued or liable for misconduct. Critics argue that scrapping the protection would make officers less aggressive in fighting crime if they have to worry about lawsuits. The measure was passed by the council as part of a package of police reform bills. So the New York City Council Speaker, Corey Johnson, he tweeted this. Yes. Qualified immunity was established in 1967 in Mississippi to prevent freedom riders from holding public officials liable even when they broke the law. Rooted in our nation's history of systemic racism, qualified immunity denied freedom riders justice and has been used to deny justice to victims of police abuse for decades. It should never have been allowed, but I'm proud that we took action today. But of course, there's also the other side. There's critics who are basically saying that without qualified immunity, police officers are just not going to, there's no incentive for them to do their job and to protect the public from violent crime. In addition to that, there's going to be a gaping hole in police departments across the country because people aren't just going to, are not going to want to sign up to be cops anymore. So it's a really, really divided issue that continues to, have a lot of people talking.
I think it's divided as well when you think about it because police officers may not want to show up and do their full job. At the same time, if this does go across the country, will it bring down police brutality and the shootings that we are seeing? That's something, because if you think about the last 10 years, cities have spent $3 billion paying out due to what police have done. That was not right.
Romeo,
So
I have a hard...
No, go for it, Demi.
I have a hard time believing that, people are not going to want to sign up to be cops because there's a certain esteem, there's a certain feeling that comes with being a cop. Cops are around to serve and protect. Cops are not around to be able to kill people and get away with it and be able to, shrug it off as, I have qualified immunity. I can do whatever I want. So I really don't. It does. No, you're absolutely right that it does happen. But I'm not concerned about, and this wasn't to you, I'm just saying because there's a lot of people feel that way, that people aren't going to want to be cops. Like, trust me, there are going to be people that want to sign up to be cops to make that money regardless of what happens, but you're there to serve and protect, not to be able to use qualified immunity to get away with killing people, period.
So I want to ask you a question, also giving different perspectives from different activists, right? Because as Melissa mentioned, this is police reform, which is we've always talked about is different from defunding the police or police abolition. And reform, the big focus on reform is or police abolitionists say that the focus on the reform puts too much on punishing police after they do something wrong. And abolitionists and people who are proponents of defunding police want things to stop happening, period.
Right.
And so my question is, knowing all of those things, do you think this will actually make a change? Before you answer that, you'll remember that another form of police reform with the NYPD years ago was banning chokeholds, which were banned and illegal when Eric Garner was killed by way of an illegal NYPD chokehold. And it took 5 years for that officer to lose his job. So knowing that and knowing how often, these rules and laws aren't deterrents, do you see this one making a change?
I don't know. That's why I say it's on the fence, because some people agree, some people side with this, think this is a good thing. I think it's still an internal problem that comes about the training and who's really in charge.
Does the fact that it affects money potentially make a difference here?
I think that this one is I think that this one is going to be different from the chokeholds, just simply because it's such an overarching change in legislation, you know what I'm saying, and it's catching traction. Who's up next is Illinois. They are voting on it's called the Bad Apples in Law Enforcement Accountability Act. So they're next in line to do the same thing that New York is doing, and then Colorado's also designing their own legislation around getting rid of qualified immunity. So I think that this is going to have a much more sweeping change than the chokeholds, because that's up to perception and
right.
It's messy.
So is qualified immunity, because once you sue, it then goes to a jury made up of the same pool that also decides often that police shouldn't be held accountable for murders, or because, again, the deterrent here would be losing money, but the deterrent with the chokeholds would be jail, prison time,
Yeah, that's true.
losing your job.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I want to let you answer, Demi. Sorry.
No. I'm going to go to the next story here. So Governor Brian Kemp quickly signed a rewrite of Georgia's election rules into law on Thursday. The law creates stricter voting ID requirements, bans giving snacks and water to voters waiting in line, limits drop boxes, and allowing state takeovers of local elections. This comes after last year's close presidential race, according to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Kim finalized the bill just over an hour after it cleared the General Assembly, leaving no doubt about its fate amid public pressure against voting restrictions. Republican lawmakers pushed the legislation through both the House and Senate over the objections of Democratic lawmakers. The legislation passed along party lines in both chambers with votes of 34-20 in the Senate and 100-75 in the House. A very big story on social media and just among people. So it's the measure is called SB 202. And so Stacey Abrams, she fought very, very hard in Georgia for black voters. And so she posted a string of messages online. I can't read it all, but just a couple of them. She said in 11 years, you guys, she said she's never witnessed a massive bill being approved at such speed and signed in such desperation. She called it the Jim Crow in a suit. A lot of people are saying this is Jim Crow 2.0. She also said that it cuts off access, it adds restrictions. It's encouraging a show me your papers actions challenging a citizen's right to vote. She also added here, she says, we will not be defeated by their worst actions and instincts. We will spread the word and we will sue and we will win. On that note, 3 voting rights groups sued the state of Georgia after this, saying that it violates the Voting Rights Act today. So the New York Georgia Project, which Stacey Abrams, the Voters Matter Fund, and also Rise Incorporated all sued the state of Georgia today. A
lot of people are upset with this situation. I mean, people that I know they really didn't care about politics or about voting, just like, yo, are you serious? This is happening, right? Because it's so discouraging when you see something like this. And now they're saying, let me see what I read right here. They're saying now if your employer, if you're late back from lunch and your employer finds out you were voting, or if you take a day off and you were voting, he can fire you. I'm kidding about that, but that's how I feel that they're going to go to the extreme to try and block our vote.
Yeah,
that's
because
not,
it's so powerful.
This is not okay. I mean, basically what's happened is that Trump's false narrative about election fraud has become, the potential to become irrevocable law, and what's so ironic about this is just 6 months ago, Georgia Republicans and politicians basically stood by the results of the election. So, Trump was all on Twitter and freaking out and, saying, whatever he was saying about them. So it's just like, it's so funny that it's just ironic that this is the situation we find ourselves in at this point.
To Melissa's point, that this has to do with Trump's rhetoric. A lot of activists are saying just that this is a direct response to what happened during this past election. And they're saying you can actually follow the bullet points of the new law. For instance, a couple examples that I can think of, taking away the power and control over elections from the Secretary of State. People are saying, hey, that goes back to that phone call that the Washington Post let us all hear with Donald Trump just chewing up Brad Raffensperger, the current Secretary of State. Also, number 2, they've shortened early voting for runoff elections. And people are saying that goes directly to the fact that Republicans just lost 2 major runoff elections and sending, Democrats John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock to the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, unbelievable. Well, here's more to that story. Georgia State troopers arrested State Representative Park Cannon as she knocked on Governor Brian Kemp's door, interrupting his live stream announcement that he had signed the election bills into law. The officers forcibly removed Cannon, a Democrat from Atlanta, dragging her through the Capitol and pushing her into a police car. She was charged with obstruction of law enforcement and disrupting General Assembly sessions, according to the Georgia State Patrol, and released on bond late Thursday. Cannon was with several other protesters when she knocked on Kemp's office door and stated that the public should be allowed to witness the announcement of the controversial voting bill signing. Now, we do know that Senator Raphael Warnock, he went by to visit her while she was in jail for that short time. But this is just, you think about it, you're allowed inside this building, right? People are upset, but I see people posting saying this is the new Klan because they had a picture of those men behind the closed door, some with masks on, I think all of them had masks, not sure, signing this and not allowing people to truly speak on it, which just shows how desperate they are to try and make this change around.
Senator Warnock got on,
Go ahead. No, I was going to talk about Warnock, so go ahead.
Yeah, he got on a plane immediately. Came down there with, like you said, was waiting outside. This is something, I'm curious your thoughts on this, because this is something that I saw a lot of, powerful voting activists saying. They were saying the image of a black woman, a lawmaker, being kind of dragged out of the state house like that, arrested by state troopers, is going to place fear in the minds of black people when they're trying to vote and make sure that they don't mess up when it comes to all of these new laws. Again, like one of you mentioned, as simple as giving water to people in line trying to vote.
I think that was the intention. I really do. I absolutely think that that was the intention. You know, white supremacy at work. You know, just basically like black people know your place type thing. And Jen Psaki, she was, you know, in the press room. And they asked her about this, and she stated that anyone who witnessed it would be disturbed, because that's exactly what the video was. It was incredibly disturbing. It was scary to watch. But she also said the larger concern here, besides how she was treated, was that that bill is making its way to becoming a law. And then she went on to describe all the reasons why it's, you know, detrimental to democracy, and that Biden is very aware of it, and you know, and it's completely ridiculous.
You know what, guys? This video was absolutely awful to watch. But Romeo, when you brought up Raphael Warnock, for some reason, I found myself so emotional. The video, because everyone was just so happy when he pulled up. I'm saying when he pulled up, but when he arrived at where Park Cannon was at, and it was just Park Cannon. Yeah. So it was just so emotional for me, because so many people were just like, "Get him, Warnock! Get him, Warnock! Get him, Warnock!" It was just like so many people just love when he comes around and they feel his spirit that he's gonna make some things happen. So I don't know. I just found myself, you know, almost just tearful when I saw that. But also, there's actually been a GoFundMe started for her legal fees as well. The goal was $5,000. It surpassed that. So I don't know if you want to donate to her legal fees. But Brooke, back to your point. I mean, it was just an awful video to watch. I mean, in Georgia, you know what to do.